Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Tchaikovsky, Essential Works for Beginners, by popular demand, which means at least one person asked for it. Because in the world of classical music, when one person asks for something, it's popular. And we have a slightly different definition than in the rest of the universe. Now, of course, Tchaikovsky's music is exceptionally popular. Everybody loves it. There's tons of it. His reputation is a little bit on the outs lately. He seems to be looked down upon by a lot of the more Germanically inclined music historians. And he's looked down upon because his music is so popular, which is, of course, the dumbest, most snotty, ridiculous reason to look down on anything. We should all be so popular, right? Come on, it's just jealousy. That's all it is. But I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 absolutely essential works that will form the nucleus of your Tchaikovsky collection. Now, the wonderful thing about Tchaikovsky, which makes him rather easy for collectors to start with, is that he was first and foremost an orchestral composer. Although he wrote some lovely chamber music and a couple wonderful operas, none of that really matters in terms of getting started. It matters later, once you get into him and you want to expand your knowledge. But to get started, you need to just focus on big, lovely, sumptuous, gorgeous orchestral music. That's something we all love. So here are 10 major works, or at least wonderful beginners' works. And we start at the very beginning with Romeo and Juliet. Now, most people have heard Romeo and Juliet, right? You know the tune. Ya da 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 da. It's so beautiful. One of the things that always impressed me about that tune wasn't just how lush and lovely it is, but how Tchaikovsky handles dissonance. That is, clashing harmonies. It's not the most obvious tune in the world. I mean, if you sing it like I just did, for example, it can sound kind of plain and ordinary and lacking in something, because what it's lacking is the harmony. And that harmony is really poignant. You know, you think of the word poignant, you know, like bittersweet. It has that sense of its own destruction sort of built into it, the yearning, the intensity. It's really amazing. It's what Tchaikovsky had. It was a quality he had like no other composer before and very few since. Now, Romeo and Juliet is a perfect piece of music. And the reason it's perfect is because it does exactly what music can do. And it doesn't attempt to do what music cannot do. In other words, it illustrates those qualities of the play which are purely musical. Conflict, the love interest, the lyrical, the passionate, emotional love stuff, and the clash between those two basic qualities, with over all of it a somewhat religious or spiritual thing which represents Friar Lawrence, but it's a chorale tune. Da 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 da, which gives it a sense of religiousness in spots. And all of those elements get all jumbled up and mixed up in what is a perfect sonata form movement. The first subject, first you have the introduction, right? And the introduction hints at the religious background and then the turmoil to come. And then you have a first subject, which is the battle music. Bum ba-da-dum, bum ba-ba-ba-dum, ba-ba-ba, which is fantastic. Then you have a second subject, which is the love music, the Romeo and Juliet music. And then you have a development section where all those three elements, the religious, the conflict, the battle music, and the love music, get all mixed up, leading to a recapitulation, that is a restatement of the original battle music, and a climactic statement of the love music, and a total collapse ending in death, which is a huge timpani roll, like pow, like that, and then a sad coda, like a funeral march with a timpani drumming underneath. It's just exactly what music can represent. Tchaikovsky naturally understood. He's not trying to do Romeo and Juliet having dinner, or Mercutio and Tybalt going out to lunch, or their bowling league, or it's just the three elements that would go into making a perfect symphonic first movement. And that's why Romeo and Juliet is so fabulous, because the drama suits the form of the work. And that's the perfect introduction to Tchaikovsky's art, particularly for those who think that his handling of form was sometimes shaky. Sometimes it was. I mean, there's no question. Not everybody's equally good at everything all the time. But here it was not, and it was only shaky in exceptional circumstances. Normally he knew exactly what he was doing and how to do it. And that's what we need to keep in mind. So after that, ballet. Tchaikovsky was the greatest ballet composer that ever lived. His three great ballets are, Swan Lake, the Nutcracker, and Sleeping Beauty. We're going to deal with two of them in this section. Not perhaps the greatest of the ballets, but the most well-known. And again, like I said, popularity it matters. Two of his ballets are incredibly popular. The greatest of all is Sleeping Beauty, which is a good 2.5 hours long. It's big, it's huge, it's long, and Tchaikovsky loved it the most of all of them. But it's also the toughest because it's the longest. And so we begin with Swan Lake, the suite or the complete ballet. I would always go for the complete ballets if I can, if you have the time, because there's just so much good music in them. I mean, Tchaikovsky managed also to express drama through the dance. And Swan Lake has a particularly stupid plot. I mean, there's the white swan and the black swan and Siegfried, and they're shooting at things. I have no clue what's going on in this ballet. But the drama is in the music. What you hear is that something seriously fabulous is going on. And of course, the end, there's that transfigured finale. It's just terrific. So Swan Lake, you could just sink your teeth into whenever you get a chance. Then we have to deal with the symphonies. And Tchaikovsky wrote 7 of them, including the Manfred Symphony, which is a series of 4 tone poems in symphonic shape. But there are 6 numbered symphonies, and we're going to talk about the last 2, beginning with number 5. It's just an incredibly beautiful work with a slow movement that has 2 tunes to die for, and a controversial finale, which some people feel comes off well, and other people feel is a little bit stiff and doesn't quite satisfy in its heroic conclusion to what is a initially rather tragic opening. There is a motto theme that returns in every single movement. That motto was, rumored to represent Tchaikovsky's torment over his homosexuality. And that's exactly the kind of thing that music cannot express. Torment, yes. Homosexual torment, no. I mean, you have to just settle for torment. Whatever kind floats your boat, the torment is the torment. And the rest of the biographical BS that we deal with is irrelevant. And the rest of the music speaks for itself. It's a big, beautiful, lush, romantic symphony full of good tunes. After the 5th Symphony, there's the Serenade for strings, one of the great works of the Romantic period for string orchestra. There are a few of those. There's the Dvorak Serenade for strings, the Tchaikovsky, and other wonderful string orchestra pieces, the Grieg-Holberg Suite, and slightly after the turn of the century, there's pieces like the Vaughan Williams Fantasia on a theme by Thomas Tallis. There's a whole school of British string music. There's tons of it. This is lovely, and it has one of the most beautiful waltzes in the world in the middle of it. Tchaikovsky was a master of dance music in all forms, and he put it into his symphonies. He put dance music into his operas, a lot of it in his operas. And as a result, again, that's one of the reasons he tends to get looked down upon, because ballet music is generally considered to be somewhat below, really intellectual, serious music. Why? Because it's based on rhythm and simplicity of rhythm for the purposes of effective dancing. And anybody who thinks that, dance rhythms are somehow crude or vulgar or obnoxious probably is not a human being, because that's what it's all about. It's about human bodies in motion. And the waltz of the Serenade is so lovely. Da 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 dum ba, ya da 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 da. That's a great tune, and it's just beautiful. So after that, the Piano Concerto No. 1, another fascinating work that for some reason has gotten poo-pooed because of its supposed formal or structural weaknesses. It has no structural weaknesses. It happens to have an introduction with one of the greatest tunes ever written. And that tune is so compelling and so beautiful, and that introduction is so perfect in itself that people tend to think that the first movement doesn't work. Well, the first movement works perfectly fine. It just happens to have a big, long introduction, which you might even consider a separate movement that runs in to the sonata form first movement in delightful, perfectly satisfying concerto form. And the rest of it is a home run all the way. I don't know why people have these ideas. I really don't. As if it's necessary to somehow make comparisons between different schools of composition so that the insecurities of one school are bolstered, by denigrating another. Anybody who could write tunes as great as Tchaikovsky's had no problem with form, because the tune is the form, and that's all there is to it. So you hear the tune, da 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 da. It was a pop song. Tonight we love. That was called Tonight We Love. I have no idea what the rest of the words are. It's a great concerto with a brilliant, zippy finale. And after that, we do one of his other shorter concert works, the Capriccio Italien. Yeah, it's supposed to be a tribute to Italian music. Actually, much of Tchaikovsky's work is a tribute to Italian music. In fact, much of Romantic music, whether people agree or admit it or not, is a tribute to Italian music, because Italian music is and especially, the Italian operatic music, the bel canto school from the beginning of the 19th century, Bellini, Donizetti, early Verdi, late Rossini, all those people, they were the people who invented modern Romantic music. And the syntax of Italian opera is often the syntax of the music that came later, and Tchaikovsky knew his Italian opera. He really did. Stravinsky used to talk about how beautiful Tchaikovsky's Italian melodies were. And here's a piece which is frankly Italian, so he gets to do what he does best. Gorgeous singing, melodic Italian tunes. And after that, another ballet, the Nutcracker. Everybody knows the Nutcracker, right? We hear it every Christmas ad nauseum. Listen to the whole ballet, not just the suite. The suite consists of the overture to the whole opera and a little march from the beginning of the opera, and then the dances from the second half, the second act of the opera, where Clara and the prince, the soldier who turns into a prince, and they go off to Candyland. The plot's ridiculous. And they just sit around on a bench like this for the whole thing with their feet stuck out, and they watch people dance. And what they watch is the rest of the Nutcracker suite. But you really should hear the whole thing, because it's symphonic and it's gorgeous. The first act has some of the most amazing music. The battle between the Mouse King and the toy Nutcracker with all the little toy instruments, and then the gigantic transfiguration scene when the Christmas tree grows and everybody comes to life. And it's just so cool. So wonderful, with longer stretches of music than you find in the little tiny bits that make up the suite. So try the whole ballet. It's only about an hour and 10 minutes long. I know people go, hour and 10 minutes. I mean, compared to, pop music where a song is 2 or 3 minutes, yeah, that's a lot. But in classical terms, it's not bad at all. It's actually rather short, because Tchaikovsky wrote it as the first half of a double header. It originally went together with a one-act opera called Yolanta, about a blind girl who miraculously regains her sight and whatnot. And, nobody plays that much anymore. They don't do the piece the way Tchaikovsky intended it. We only hear the ballet because it's become such an iconic Christmas work. But you can listen to it any time of the year, and you will love it. And next, the Violin Concerto. Now, this is not one of my favorite Tchaikovsky works. It just isn't. And that's me. It's full of his wonderful tunes, and it's extraordinarily effectively written for the violin. Originally, violinists didn't like it because it was considered to be so rough and ready. I mean, it has lots of double stopping where you hit 2 strings at once and it's going scrunchy, 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 scrunchy sort of things. But it's full of great tunes, and it's incredibly exciting, and most people love it, so ignore me. If you like it. Go for it. Maybe it will be your favorite piece, or maybe it won't. But that's for you to decide, not for me to tell you what you should like and not like. Then we got to do the 1812 Overture. Everyone says that's like a piece of trash. And Tchaikovsky said, yeah, it's very noisy, isn't it? It is written for the largest forces ever assembled for a piece of music, because it requires an entire city. I mean, you're supposed to have all the bells in all the churches, and then, the cannons from the army brigade and all that stuff. So potentially, at least, there is no limit to how large the Nutcracker, the 1812 Overture can be. It's got the French national anthem in it. It's got the Tsar's hymn. It's got explosions. You listen to it on the 4th of July or other patriotic occasions, no matter what country you're from, and everyone has a great time. And anybody who can write a piece of music that's that much fun is a great composer, and it needs no further recommendation from me. And so last but not least, we have to do the 6th Symphony, the Pathétique. Now, Pathétique does not mean pathetic. Pathétique means dramatic, stormy, emotionally intense. And that's what this piece is. It's very dark and gloomy at the beginning and totally tragic and a simple abyss of lamentation at the very end. It's a tough piece to take in all at once. I would not listen to it regularly. It's for special occasions. It's emotionally devastating. But like everything Tchaikovsky wrote, it has the most beautiful melodies. It's so emotionally honest and just gut-wrenching. Even conductors who generally don't like Russian music and don't like Tchaikovsky, they all did the Pathétique. Why? Because it was dark and miserable. And German conductors particularly always go for the dark and miserable. I mean, they think that's profound. But in this case, it's the simplicity of expression that is so devastating. The finale is a slow movement. It's an adagio, and it's absolutely one of the most terrifyingly sad pieces of music anybody ever thought up. And sad in a beautiful way, in a way that it's moving. It's not like sad you want to slit your wrists and jump off a building. It's sad in the sense that you experience this and you are purged when it's over. And that's a wonderful way to end this little chat with Tchaikovsky's ability to use emotion to make us feel something just extraordinarily, sometimes hopeful, sometimes not as hopeful, but always passionate, intense, alive, and magnificent. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me, and enjoy your Tchaikovsky. Take care.